Welcome to Fave 5 podcast number 15. Today I'm joined by Kim Glover, who is a knowledge management professional as I am. And Kim, welcome to the Fave 5 podcast.
Thank you, Stan. I'm delighted. I was beyond excited when I got your invitation, and I realized you wanted me to attend as me, not as the person who does my job or has my work history. That's so flattering. I'm humbled.
Well, it's not yet another knowledge management podcast, that's for sure. And what we do is we talk about your background. We talk about the 5 topics of the Fave 5 newsletter. We get a story from you at the end, and then I'll wrap it up with a story of my own. And I start out by talking about how I met you. I'm not sure exactly which year I met you, but I'm sure it was at KM World conference, or maybe it was at an APQC conference, but one of the knowledge management conferences that we've both attended. And then since that time, we've probably seen each other every year at KM World and gone to each other's sessions and hung out and developed a relationship where now we are going to be both involved in a session this coming KM World. We'll talk about that later. But let's get started with talking about your background. Where and when were you born?
So I was born right here in Houston, Texas in 1963 and never really lived here until a little bit later in my life because my dad was a junior exec for a big oil company. So it's interesting to end up where I was born but hadn't lived.
What's your ancestry?
Well, interestingly, Stan, I've just sent off my DNA to ancestry.com, but my dad has always said Scotch Irish for my maiden name, which is Harville. My mother was actually adopted by her stepfather when she was a baby, and her bio father was German. So I'm very excited to hear, about relatives I may have. But I think I look like most of my Alabama relatives. Very Southern.
So after you were born in Houston, you said you didn't live there for. Where else have you lived since then?
We lived all over Texas until I was 10 because as a junior executive, my dad was moved around quite a bit. And 2 years here, 2 years there, what we would call a high potential now. And he actually quit his job for that oil company because they wanted all of the managers to do a forced ranking. And you can, basically have one employee who's a one and three who are twos and four who are threes, etc. And he refused to do it. And they said, no, you have to. And he said, no, I don't have to work here. Um, so those places were Beaumont and Denton and just places all over Texas where oil companies had offices. And at that point, he actually went to work for Motorola and moved the family down to the beach. I grew up in a rural community on the beach after 10 years or at 10 years old and had what my brother and I would call a perfect childhood in Gilchrist, Texas, on the Bolivar Peninsula, 200 yards from the surf and the sand. So that's where I did my real growing up, I think.
All right, and where have you lived since then?
Well, everyone goes off to college, and my first foray to college before I decided to get married at 20 for no reason other than I thought it would make me more grown up. I went to San Marcos, Texas, and then came home and got married and lived in Galveston. And since then, I primarily have lived either in Galveston, at the beach for a little while after that early unfortunate marriage to a very nice person. It was an interesting 2 years. We were friends after. And then in Houston, basically, I had a short stint in Austin, but basically Houston since I was in my, oh, I'd say mid 20s.
So Texas for your whole life.
For my whole life, although I would love to have been transferred, to have been an expat in France or in the UK, but family is here, and I had a child with the next marriage that lasted a much longer time, and I would never have taken him away from his dad.
So who was in your family when you were growing up?
It was a small family, Stan. My nuclear family, just dad, mom, my brother, and me. And again, we had just our little perfect haven there in our beach house on stilts in Gilchrist, Texas. Um, Obviously, when you move to somewhere close to the water, um, people will come to visit you from your family from all over the country. And so, of course, we had a lot of family visitors, but just our small little family
And where did your extended family live? Were they in Texas as well, somewhere else, or were they farther away?
all over the place. Some in Texas, some aunts and uncles north, like in Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
Um, some in One of my uncles was in Nigeria for a while. Um, a lot of the family has been quite mobile. In fact, I have a cousin who um, was I get my very high ranks in the military mixed up, but the very highest rank you can be, Air Force chaplain. Um, I think he was a general, yeah, general. And that leg of the family lived in Colorado as their base and then moved all around. So just all over the place.
So what did your parents do?
I told you about my dad already.
Yes.
After the big oil company, he went to Motorola and he was a salesperson. And because he did not want to move ever, because the beach was the perfect life, my mom kind of drilled that into him. He declined all promotions from that day forward and was a salesperson. And he was the only salesperson in Motorola to get to attend the Galvin Masters as a non-manager. That's a big fancy award thing that they have. And he was there for almost 30 years and beloved. And my mother, Stan, was a registered nurse. She was extraordinarily bright, and her stepfather, who was really her dad, who was a geophysicist, wanted her to be a doctor. She said, "No, nursing is great for me. I want to be a mom. I want to have children." And she graduated high school at 16 because she was able to skip 2 grades in school. Graduated nursing school at 19 and was the head nurse on a whole floor in a hospital by the time she was 21. But I didn't really see that part of her that much because she stopped working when I was, I don't know, maybe 8 years old and just was a stay-at-home mom with a ton of energy until she was ill later. So I think what they really, really did was be parents and work to fund the life that they wanted us to have.
Sounds pretty good.
It was.
What did you like to do when you were in school?
Stan, your questions that when you sent them to me a month ago or more were so stimulating, and the self-reflection that they drove was a real gift. So thank you. Um, it was a gift to be invited to do this, and it was a gift to think about the answers to those questions and to sort of try to look at a trajectory over a life, as I'm getting into the autumn of my life, although I'm living to 101 like my grandmother. Um, in school, I like to do everything. I'm particularly interested in words and writing, in language and dialogue. And I remember being an maybe 8 year old roller skating in circles on the driveway with a giant dictionary open, memorizing words. And I actually thought rendezvous and rendezvous, which if you spell it out, that's what it looks like, were two different words until I heard someone say it. And I asked, "What is that?" and realized it was the same word. But when we got to the beach, the school there, High Island School, 7 miles from Gilchrist, where I was, had 200 pupils, and that is kindergarten through 12th grade. Not many kids. And I don't know how they got teachers that were as good as they were because the English teachers really had a true and profound impact on my life. And so in junior high and also in high school, because it was a small school, I got to do everything. I competed in spelling bees and number sense, which is math contests, and poetry recitation, and ready writing, which is writing essays under the gun fast. Um, and what else? Oh, speech, persuasive speaking, debate. Did all this stuff all the way through junior high and high school and got lots of little medals. Went to state and debate more than once in high school. And that experience in high school was really more profound and meaningful in terms of an educational ability to spread your wings and have an impact on your life than any of the college courses I took. And I have a friend who went to High Island High School or junior high, and he is an entrepreneur. And we never talk about money, but he has made and sold many companies in the tech sector. And he says the same thing. He says that his time there at that tiny school, and because of the things we were able to experiment with and do without being put in little boxes or in streams, was also more impactful for him than any college experience. And he went to fancy places like Stanford. And I'm just so grateful, Stan, that I got to do all of that stuff and also played the flute and band. And I was a head cheerleader, even though I couldn't do a handstand. I got to be the one on top of the pyramid, you know. I got to play the piccolo and the solo in the John Philip Sousa song. Which one is that? Stars and
Stars and
Stripes
Stripes.
Forever.
Yeah.
It was such a small school that the football players and the cheerleaders would march in the band during halftime wearing our cheerleading suit or our football gear. And it was just a marvelous experience. And I just have such I don't know, a gratitude, a sense of gratitude for coming from that place and those people and that experience. And I didn't realize that after I left. I thought it was hokey and rinky dink and not sophisticated, but it was everything that really mattered.
Well, it's interesting talking to people who went to a very large high school. They have the opposite experience where they couldn't make a team. There's too much
Right.
competition, right? So it sounds like you had the best of everything.
I did. I ran track, Stan. I was the slowest person. I came in last every time, but I got the heart award. And it's like, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn I could run the mile in a long time if I was at a larger school. It just wouldn't be something that I'd be allowed to do.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Everything. Um, Seriously, Stan, that's been my challenge and my blessing my whole life is I have so many interests and so many interesting people that there were so many things I wanted to do. My first major was journalism. I love words. I always gravitated toward speech classes, and I think I just wanted to be a person who was out there with people without really knowing what that would look like. I never really had a plan. That's why serendipity is my favorite word. And I think what I wanted to be was a KM person even before knowing that was a thing, because connecting people so they can share what they know and collaborate and document what they know and learn from each other is has always been a passion. I just didn't know it had a name for a long time.
So where did you go to college?
Well, I told you I got married at 20.
Hmm.
Like my mom, I didn't skip any classes, but I was younger than everyone because I started early in school. I could read pretty young, and they stuck me in kindergarten young before there were rules against that. And I went off to college at 17. Texas State used to be called Te Southwest Texas. That's in San Marcos, Texas. And I took a bunch of classes that I really, really liked, and I didn't take any classes that I didn't like. And it was okay because I was kind of ahead because of all the classes I got credit for because of how I did on the tests and stuff. Came home, got married, transferred, and the person I was married to worked on the Galveston Bolivar Ferry. He eventually became a captain, which is really cool. But at the time, he was a deckhand and he had to have an emergency surgery that took him out of work for several months. And I had to stop my school career at that point. And this will answer another of your questions, which I'll go into more detail. And I got a job at the Ashton Villa House Museum, which is part of the Galveston Historical Foundation. And then went back to school later, Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas, and then got remarried. Very interrupted career. And when I finally went back, it was to University of Houston. And the only degree plan where all of the stuff that I had taken would fit together was called interdisciplinary studies, which makes me laugh a lot now because it's so reflective of I want to do everything. I want to be involved in everything. And so that's my college career path. But again, the stuff I learned at that tiny school really has had a much more profound impact on my career.
What was your first full-time job?
That was again at the Ashton Villa Galveston Historical Foundation. I was hired as the ballroom manager. We rented out the giant ballroom for weddings and parties and things like that. I got promoted. I was 20, by the way. I got promoted to business manager, and it was quite exciting because I got to go to the board meetings with all these people that were way older than me. I got to create the budget for the next year for that museum. I got to train all of the volunteers on how to give the tours. I'm very interested in history, and there's a really nice, or there was, this is years ago, right? This was more than 40 years ago, but there was a really nice sort of guide for tour guides with just very rich history in it about the family, about what life would be like at that time, about how we weren't going to whitewash, we were going to acknowledge, since it was built in 1859, there were definitely very difficult situations for people who weren't, upper class or who were enslaved. And it actually is the place that is supposed to be where General Granger read the Emancipation Proclamation from the balcony there at Ashton Villa, which was in 1865, and that was on June 19th, and which is why we have Juneteenth in Texas. Part of that job stand, because you did everything there. Maybe it was fancy to do the budget, but I also put the flags out on the balcony in the morning and took them back in, and to stand there on that balcony and touch those flags and look out and think what it must have meant to those people hearing that Emancipation Proclamation. I still get goosebumps. It was a wonderful, wonderful first full-time job.
So after that, what are some of the highlights of your career? Take me through how that progressed.
You and I talked about doing career walks at conferences, Stan, and I thought about this question, and I have to confess, I did a KM thing. I outsourced a little bit of your questions. Not this particular question. I outsourced the question about stories. I actually sent it to about 20 people in three or maybe four or five different texts and groups that made sense, friends, colleagues who are friends, family, and just, I didn't want to miss a story. And what I got back was overwhelming and humbling, almost lump in your throat making, but it also helped me answer the question about the highlights of my career, because the highlights truly stand are the people. There have been accomplishments. Our team has won multiple awards. We won most admired knowledge enterprise or make awards from 2014 until that stopped for the Americas and also for global. And one of the memories that one of my friends and colleagues who we don't work together anymore, but we're still in each other's success team, sent was when we were in the bar waiting for our food at KM World in 2014, and we got the notice that we had won the Make Award for the Americas and global. And she said, that's a story I would love for you to tell. So that's a high point of my career. But really, the way I'd want to answer your question is it's the people that I've gotten to learn from and to know and to take on what they taught me and weave it into my career. Like I was working for a very highly skilled um, PMO lead at a previous company. He taught me a whole lot about project management, and I got to be a co-lead of our PMO after that. It was a PMO and a KMO, and I got to do fun things like project quick starts with clients and to basically do quarterly business reviews with big project teams in different places in the world. I got to go and be there in person and ask them about their risks and their opportunities and probe. I never would have had that opportunity if I hadn't had that relationship with that person I reported to, if he hadn't been empowering, if he hadn't trusted me and hadn't enabled me to maybe find some skills and interests that I didn't know I had. And the fact that these stories I got back um, make it feel like maybe I've been that for some other people in their lives and their careers. Um, Even one of them saying, you brought your quirkiness to work, and I learned I could do that too. Or you complimented me for owning a mistake. And that's when I knew that was always the way to go. So I don't really want to talk about awards or different titles I've had over the years, because this is just Kim, the person. The people are the high point, and I could close my eyes and see their faces, and the times that maybe we were standing on a stage holding crystal things in our hands. But the times that were really more powerful are when we were in the room together and we were facing, what are we going to do? This company that we work for has just bought another 7 companies, within a span of 3 or 4 months. They have a couple of KM teams or a couple of proposal teams, which I led at the time. How are we going to stay afloat? And figuring it out together, rolling up our sleeves and tackling the problems together is as much or more memorable than the things that got the visibility and the accolades. Is that an okay answer, Stan?
It is okay. I'm also curious just in terms of which companies you may have worked for. Give us sort of a sense of that.
Oh, okay. I told you about the back and forthing in college. I started my professional career before I ended college, and then after that, I was a realtor for 5 years. And that was kind of fun. It was fun learning to sell. I still use a lot of those skills. I was a realtor in a down market, selling $50,000 houses, a lot of them. And during that time, I actually got remarried, and that was really fun. Remarried to a musician. And I decided a corporate job was going to be what I needed. And I went to work for Aspen Technology and stayed there for 19 years doing various things. I've mentioned a couple of them, global proposals, but that's where I was tapped to create the knowledge management initiative, the knowledge management office. And that's when I knew what my true calling was.
Hmm.
But I have always woven in communications and supporting innovation. And in 2013, I moved to FMC Technologies, and FMC Technologies merged with Technip in 2017. So since that time, I've been working for TechnipFMC, doing various things in knowledge management, communications, change management, internal communications. So not many companies really.
Right.
I've been very, very blessed to land in places that would let me grow and evolve and exercise that natural curiosity that we have, that you have too, Stan. So that's the company story.
Great. Well, thank you for that. What's a hobby or interest that you have?
Oh, Stan, how much time do you have?
We say there's no time limit on these.
Thank God. Um, I actually wrote them down and realized when I wrote them down, I missed a couple of the biggest ones. I'm going to actually
All
look
right.
over here on
Sure.
the right. I hope you don't mind because they sort of weave together. I love to cook. We'll talk about that more in a minute. I said I love language, but I meant English because I really don't have another language except a little bit of the French I got in college. Um, but I realized in thinking about your questions and things and chastising myself for not having more languages that I do have another language. I speak food. I know food. I understand food. I can instinctively know what ingredients might go together. If I had it to do all over again, I might become a chef or a restaurant critic. That's definitely a hobby. And I've been blessed with another of my hobbies, which is travel. I've been blessed to be able to travel for work quite a bit. Um, but I know that when I'm traveling for work, like when I was doing those quarterly reviews I told you about, in the early 2000s, basically I went for 10 days to 2 weeks, every 6 weeks somewhere. I wouldn't miss the tactile touching food, chopping, basically getting my hands on something. When there's also then gardening, absolutely love to garden. We've named our home Glover Gardens, and I can see right out the window around the pool. There are many things still flowering, some orange hibiscus and some pink flowers, some mums. Stuff just comes back. I love to garden. My fingernails are always short because I break them in the dirt. And other things I mentioned travel. I also am an amateur photographer, and I call it my big camera when I travel for work. Sometimes on personal vacation, but I try to be in the moment. And basically, when work is finished, wherever I am, I'll just take one example. In London, we used to have an office across from St. Paul's, and we stayed at a hotel that was right across from the office. So you finish your meetings and stuff, 5 or 6 o'clock. I would put on tennis shoes, go outside, walk around all the way down from where St. Paul's is, through the Strand in London, all the way to Covent Garden, taking pictures along the way. Come back, and I have some wonderful pictures from around St. Paul's Cathedral at midnight. It's very well lit, and there are just people walking around and lovers, kissing on benches, and it's amazing. So photography, I'm not finished yet. I love birds, Stan. I'm can't call myself a birder because I'm not good enough at it. But I also take pictures of birds. I'm trying to
Mhm.
learn about them. Um, people, people are probably my biggest hobby. Listening, learning about them. That's where my list stopped earlier, and then I realized, oh my God, my biggest hobby is writing. And I have a blog, and that's where I combine all the other things. I have recipes, I write about food, I write a lot of poetry. If you have time, I may read you a poem at the end after my story. Um, so, poetry, haiku, um, essays, writing in my blog, traveling with my family. I now have two tiny grandboys, 4 and 2. Those are my hobbies. There'll probably be more.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to take up a few more things.
I also do embroidery. Oh, and I read. I read a ton.
Well, we'll get to that next.
Awesome. Awesome.
We're going to talk about the five topics. The first one is reading. So, what do you like to read?
Well, just like I like everything. My guilty pleasure is British murder mysteries, detective novels. I love to read things that are set where I've been or where I am. I love detective novels set in Paris as well. I've been there a lot. It's so fun to be reading something and realize you've been on that street or at that cafe. I love to read about British history or European history, in particular, like the historical long form books about the Tudors or different lineage, how we sort of became who we are. I have a book on the stack behind me, A History of the World in Food, which I think is fascinating. Haven't finished it yet. I love character study books, fiction. Um, I love nonfiction. Like one of the most interesting biographies I've ever read was Lindbergh's. Very, very interesting. And Mara Lindbergh's biography is also really, really good. So basically, I love to read everything, business books, books about collaboration, storytelling books, and your books.
Well, do you have a favorite author or a favorite book you'd like to recommend?
I do. It's an old one, but it is my favorite. It's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mhm.
It is written in such a lyrical way, starting with the very first sentence. If I wanted to lower my blood pressure, I could just read that first paragraph out loud, Stan. It is absolutely perfectly written. I love the story because it can be experienced on two levels. The level of the children in the book who are seeing the world with their big eyes, and everything is remarkable and interesting, and they're so curious, and they explore, and they're brave, but they also know the grown-ups will take care of them. And you can see it from the larger spectrum, from the adult perspective, where none of that is really actually true. The world is troubled, and things are changing and happening too fast, and there are stark depictions of good and evil. And the movie is the same way. I could watch it 1,000 times and always take another nugget from that. So if I had to recommend only one book, that would be it.
Well, it's a classic. My son, an English teacher, got to teach that every year to his middle school class. So,
Oh, what a blessing to see people, young minds open to that. Oh, that would be wonderful. I also have a long list of other authors I love, but I won't read it all to you.
well, is there a particular author you want to name? You can name a few.
Um, sure. Okay. Character studies, Ann Tyler, Ann Patchett, they're both amazing. Ian McEwan always grips you and won't let you go. And sometimes you're mad at him for the things that happen to the characters, but it's so compelling. I won't go on, but it again, your questions were really a gift to make me think about these things.
It's fascinating. I happen to love Ann Tyler a lot and Ann Patchett for sure. Ann Patchett's been named by more of our guests than any other author. So that's a
Really?
great sign because I love her.
That is amazing. I do think there is a golden invisible connection between you and your guests. I do. I've listened to a bit and I can feel it.
All right, now you've mentioned that you love to cook. So I'll ask you two parts of the food question. What do you like to cook, but also what do you like to eat?
Okay, I'll start with eating. I love to eat pretty much everything but alligator, mayonnaise, and beets. I hate those three things. Um, Now, I love to go to a place and eat the food of that culture. Um, I'm a foodie, so I love, street food you can get in Paris, as well as, the crepes that you can get on the street, or a fancy dinner there, for instance. Savory over sweet every time. If I had to pick only two things, I would say brie and pico de gallo. And I would add to that I really love spicy and I carry my own pepper, my own red pepper, my own pepper grinder, because I usually can't get it spicy enough. Like in Scotland, that food is wonderful, but you cannot get it spicy. Um, that's what I love to eat. Cooking, Southwest, spicy. Um, also like challenges. Like if I was going to have a guest, I sometimes will ask, do you have any food requests? Is there something from your childhood or your culture or something you've never tried and you would like to? That's how I learned how to make baked Alaska, which sounds way more impressive than it is. So I like cooking challenges. I like making up things. I've made up a bunch of different spice mixes. Um, that's what I like to cook. Everything.
That sounds good to me. If I were to come visit you in Houston, where would you take me if we were to go out to eat?
I wouldn't take you out to eat. Well, yeah, I would. I would take you out to Chez Nu, which is a marvelous French restaurant in an old house, an old church actually, and then a house in Humble, which is a little bit north of Houston. A spectacular, non-fussy, as good as any food I've ever had in Paris. But if we only had one night and I was going to make sure that you got fed well, you would come to my house, Stan, and we would make gumbo together.
Oh, great.
Um, Gumbo is my specialty, maybe that's more correct. And I have actually given gumbo classes to friends and family. Actually, once taught 300 ladies at church. Sorry, I once taught 30 ladies to make gumbo at church to serve 300 people. So I've got this gumbo lessons thing down, and you would be a sausage slicer, a chicken picker, a vegetable chopper, or a roux maker. You can't do all of them. But you would learn how to put it all together. If you don't already know, you may be a gumbo meister.
I'm a gumbo lover. I don't necessarily. What kind of hot sauce would you put out with that your gumbo?
Tabasco. Yes, for sure. Tabasco. But they have a lot of different ones.
I
I
know.
might do the garlic Tabasco.
Okay.
I might do the Family Reserve, which is like regular Tabasco, only it's hotter, and you
Okay.
can only get it there.
Got it. Moving on to music. Do you have a favorite song or musician or concert or album?
Pat Metheny, guitar player, jazz. Um, all his music, basically, I've said before, it sounds kind of trite, but his music is a soundtrack to my life. I was introduced to it by my husband, my son's father, who is now my ex-husband and friend. And I just love that music. I've seen Pat Metheny play quite a few times, and there's this particular song on the Pat Metheny Group album, Travels Live, called Are You Going With Me? And for me, that is just a song you can meditate to. It's also inspirational. It's almost defying description. It's going to be played at my funeral. My son is a musician. He knows all the songs that have to be played at my funeral, and it really makes me laugh because the song's name is Are You Going With Me? Which I think is hilarious. So definitely Pat Metheny.
And what does your son play?
My son just got his doctorate in jazz studio arranging at University of Miami. He plays piano and keyboard, also melodica, which is something you blow into, but it has keys. So
Hmm.
it's like and he played oboe in junior high. He's never actually had piano lessons till he got to college, but he's quite amazing. Of course, I'm his mom,
Hmm.
and jazz is his genre, as I
Okay.
mentioned. And his dad it still is a jazz musician. Um, so he just basically got it by osmosis.
So we have something in common there. My brother is a jazz keyboard player.
I saw that, and I saw that he was a musical director for, remind me, I
George
remember
Benson.
going,
George
right. I
Benson.
was like, oh my God. In fact, I called my son and told him, I was like, can you get a job like that, Thomas? Oh,
All right. You have, that's, I was going to ask you about the first record that you bought.
the first record that I bought was when I was 10 years old, but hadn't moved to the beach yet. Still lived in Beaumont. I was trying to conform. That's one reason we moved to the beach because my mother didn't want us to think we had to be like everyone. And I wasn't hip, cool. I wasn't really into pop stuff. I listened to the stuff my parents listened to, Smothers Brothers, Kingston Trio. And there was a slumber party, and you had to bring records. So I asked a couple of different friends what their favorite songs were, and my dad went out and bought 245s. One of them was Stuck in the Middle with You, which I really like.
Yeah.
And one of them was Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress. So those were my first
Okay.
records.
Okay.
Didn't even know the songs at the time.
And do you like those songs now?
I do. I
Okay.
really do. Because they make me remember what it was like to
Mhm.
try to fit in. I didn't belong with that group of girls anyway. I was an out group. And that was one thing I learned is don't try to be like everyone else. Just be yourself. So when I went to the new school, I was just myself.
What was the last concert that you attended?
I'm so excited that you asked this, Stan. If we talked about this last week, I wouldn't have as good of an answer. So on Monday night of this week, my husband and I, happily remarried, by the way, for 17 years. Tom and I went to a place in the Woodlands, Texas called Do Si Do, which I've driven by 1,000 times, did not realize what it was. The reason we went is because my son, who now lives in Austin after just graduating, and is a full-time jazz musician, was playing there with the Texas Jazz Orchestra. And it was an 18-piece jazz big band with all the horns. I mean, like four trombones and five trumpets and all the saxes of every different size. And it was just an amazing experience. They had two guest artists. I wrote her name down, Gunhild Carling and Eden Carling. Gunhild Carling is a singer from Norway, amazing show person. And Eden is her daughter who now lives in LA. Gunhild played seven instruments. She played trombone and trumpet. She played three trumpets at the same time. I am not making this up with both hands. I mean, and it sounds like a sticky thing, but it was spectacular. And the band leader, I've been seeing him play for 35 years. He's been playing with, my ex-husband. I actually knew a lot of the musicians who were all at least 20 years older than my son. And they, greeted me and said hi, which made me feel really good. But the music, hearing an 18-piece band and the horns and the arrangements were spectacular. And the band leader, who was also a singer, he is an amazing singer. He has such an instinct for what's right, and he's so generous to the other musicians. And at the end, um, Gunhild and her daughter, both playing trombone at this time, went off the stage and started to walk around the crowd. And the last three tunes, my son told me, had not been rehearsed. They were just, she would call out blues in B flats, drummer, count it up. And of course, we know that this happens, but with an 18-piece band, that's amazing.
Yeah. Right.
And the band leader saw them go. And they didn't know, and pointed at the sax player toward the end of the stage, go. And the whole band, except for my son playing keys, the rhythm guitar, and the drummer, went through the audience. And it was like a second line parade, jazz parade in New Orleans. And I'm getting goosebumps now just talking about it. And I had invited one of my colleagues and his wife, and they said it was the most fun they had in 4 years. It was spectacular. So that's the last concert I went to. Thank you for asking.
Sounds great. You mentioned telling your son about my brother. That in this podcast series, the fourth guest was my brother. So if you want to hear more
I
about his
saw
story,
that.
you can check that out.
I do. I absolutely do. I can't wait because wow, that's royalty. That's music royalty right there.
So do you like sports?
I like sports. I'm a little more measured about it now though, because I feel like I can get too invested and I don't want a sports team that I have no control over to put me in a bad mood because they didn't win. Um, I love baseball in particular. My dad taught me all about it, although I was lousy at one game and then they asked me to be the bat girl. But as a mom of little leaguer, I liked being the scorekeeper and I know, from how to do all that. And I love to listen to it on the radio in particular. We're lucky in Houston to have Milo Hamilton, a fantastic radio announcer. He's the one who announced the home run record being broken, I think in 1961. Can't remember who did it. That's terrible. You probably do. But he was just an incredible announcer. And so listening to baseball on the radio is really fun. But my favorite thing to do now with sports is to watch kids play. Or when my son was playing, just he was a pitcher, lefty. Um, Part of you dies as you watch your child wind up to throw, and part of you, is delighted. But football's a little too violent for me now. It feels like a long time ago, like the Christians and the Lions or something. You're just lined up to hit each other. So I know that's not a popular outlook. Maybe you need to edit this out.
No, no, it's a very valid outlook, I think especially for parents thinking about their children.
Yeah,
So now
yeah.
the if that home run record you were talking about was indeed 1961, which is a long time ago, that would have been the Roger Maris breaking Babe Ruth's single season home run record.
It was,
It was
I
that
think.
one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And it was a big deal. And I can still hear Milo Hamilton's voice in my head because it gets played all the time. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite team or athlete?
Um, my 4-year-old grandson, he's going to play t-ball
Okay,
on
good answer.
Saturday and we get to go. Uh, yeah, that's what I would say. And anyone really who puts their whole heart into it. I love watching the Olympics. Um, those people work so incredibly hard and they're so driven. But there's not one that really stands out.
Okay. Any sports memory that you have, like from following baseball or any early Olympics or anything else?
Yeah, and it's very personal. I think, Stan, maybe you can connect with this. For me, there have been like 5 or 6 moments in my life where even as they were happening, I knew I would remember them my whole life. Just you were so in the moment. And one of them is when my son hit a home run, and he wasn't like a baseball star. He was pretty good, and he's a pretty good pitcher, but he wasn't nobody's going to recruit him ever was going to recruit him. He's 27 now. Um, But this one particular game, I'm just sitting there in the stand and watching as moms do, and he hit it, and I just knew it was going out. And the sound stopped. I I felt like I was in a different universe. And we have a video, and I may have taken the video, but I have no memory of that. And it's just a beautiful moment because he played since he was 6 years old. And this was when he was like 15. It was the last year. And it's just nice to see that sort of culmination of all those
Right.
years of just showing up, putting on your uniform and doing what you're supposed to do. That's my favorite moment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I used to, my son would hit a home run. I would come back later at night and I'd lay down and just say, I'm going to sa savor the memory.
Yes. Yes. And it's not because you want them to be better than anyone else's kid. It's because you're rejoicing that they accomplished
Right.
something.
Right. In fact, on the very first podcast in this series, my son is my guest, and he relates a story about how he hit a home run off a famous athlete, Drew Stanton. But it's a pretty funny story because he basically said he closed his eyes and swung.
That's what life is like sometimes, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
You know?
Your best moments can be when you're not, in fact, sure why they're happening.
Yeah,
All right, our last topic is comedy. So, do you have a favorite comedian or comedy film or show?
I do. I absolutely adore Mary Tyler Moore. And my son and I, while he was in college, first in Austin at UT, and then the two post grads at U Miami, when he would come home, I have the whole 7 years. We would watch two or three Marys. And so it was like, Mom, I'm gonna be home on Saturday evening. We'll probably have time for a couple of Marys and maybe one on Sunday before I go. And it took us, and my husband started watching with us too. It took us most of the years to get through all the Marys. And then we started on Dick Van Dyke. And the humor is still so relevant. And a lot of the social issues are still very, very relevant. And knowing how much those people enjoyed working together, from reading about it afterward,
Mhm.
it gives me such delight to see them. I might watch them all again just for fun. Maybe we could do that together.
Who's the best at making you laugh?
That's a hard one. I couldn't answer that. That's one thing I also crowdsourced, and most of my people said, well, it's me, of course. But I think what makes me laugh the most is being in a relaxed situation with one or more people you deeply care about when something even just mildly humorous happens and you're able to leverage it into something that's memorable. And I see experiences in my head. And what happens is you just get off on this gale of laughter and can't stop. And it becomes funny because it's funny, not because you're laughing, not because it's
Right,
actually funny.
right.
And it's usually something physical, like there was a leaf on my husband's head and his hair coming. He came in from outside, and we were preparing for Thanksgiving dinner, and I thought it was a roach. And I was terrified and I was screaming, and it was only a leaf. And for some reason, my niece and I, we couldn't stop laughing. I couldn't even tell him I thought it was a roach. So it's silly things like that. So I think who's the best at making me laugh is whoever I'm with in the silly moment.
Got it.
Yeah.
And the other side, do you have any people that you tend to crack up?
My son, in fact, that was his answer. He said if he was answering that question, he knows someone else named Kim. He said the two Kimberlys in my life are the ones that crack
Yeah.
me up. And when you know someone that well, I know this about you too, Stan, you can push their funny button and you can stretch it out to 10 or 15 minutes if you try a little bit, right?
Yes, something that I sort of got from my dad, who loved to make people laugh, but we always thought that his humor was corny and repetitive. But his best audience was my mom, who he could predictably crack up even though he was telling the same joke, and it generally would cause her to have to run out of the room. That was his desired effect. But in any
I
case,
love that.
I think I've done a better job at telling better jokes, but that would be something someone else would have to comment on. Now we've reached the point where you're going to tell us a story. What kind of a story have you selected to share with us?
I'm going to share a story in three parts about connection and loss. And I'm probably not going to cry, but if I do, it will be bittersweet and underscored by happiness that I had that joy in my life in the first place. The first story is about Labor Day. The last time I saw my mom, I told you I grew up at the beach, and she had a heart attack when she was 52, 10 years younger than I am right now, which is wild. And she was basically an invalid the last years of her life, and even bedridden or chair ridden, if you will, in an easy chair. And we all went to the beach to visit my parents for Labor Day, my brother and his wife and my nieces, who are amazing, and my husband, my son's father, and me. My son was tiny, 3, maybe 2.5 even. And we hung out and told stories. And she couldn't speak because her vocal cords had been damaged. She couldn't speak anymore. But she would, chuckle silently at appropriate times. And she was following the stories. She was all there mentally. And then, as you do when you go to the beach, especially with small children, we decided to go to the beach, and we packed up our sunscreen and our kids and our diaper bags and all started to walk out. And I lingered back a little, and I said to her, I know you want to run and jump and play. And I'm so sorry that you can't. And being a registered nurse, my mom was super stoic. She told me life isn't fair 1,000 times when I was a kid. I never saw her cry except one other time. But there was just a small tear that came out. And then she smiled and shooed me out of the room to go to the beach. And I knew she watched me all the way. And that visit was the last time I saw her. I was on a business trip the next week to Boston at a internal marketing conference. And the conference was over, and it was Friday morning. I was sitting at the airport, Logan Airport, and chatting with a fellow traveler, not somebody I knew, just a stranger. There was a woman behind us on a cell phone, which was still quite new. This was 2000. And she had no couth and was speaking too loud. And the traveler and I were talking about how we need some protocols about cell phones, which is still true. And we exchanged cards. He did something similar at a different company in the energy industry. And it was still early before my flight. So I went to call the office and check on my team, see how they were doing. And one of the managers that reported to me was the one that I called. And he said, everything's going great, Kim. We got it all under control. Everything is fine, but you need to call your dad. So I called my dad, and he said, Kimberly, I need to tell you your mother died in the night. And I said, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. And he said, I believe all the stuff I've been teaching you all these years. She's happy now. Rejoice. So I went and sat back down, and I must have had a look on my face. And the man said, is there anything you want to talk about? And I just told him. He was just a nice man. He had children too. And I told him what happened. And I was actually heading to Delaware, not home, to go meet with an internal client that had some issues with the way my team did proposals. And my dad had said, go have that meeting, then come home. You don't need to change anything. And the man was a much more frequent traveler than me, and he was called up first. And when I went to get on the plane, Stan, they said, your seat has changed. And they put me in first class. He had given me his seat. And it was a small plane. There were only like 2 or 4 seats in first class, and I was the only person. And we went above the clouds. And, I've known my mom died for 45 minutes. But she was not herself those last years. She couldn't run and jump and play. And as we got above the clouds, the sun was shining, and all of a sudden, all these memories of how she was when I was little, riding her bike through the surf with us kids, and holding up sand dollars and starfish came flooding back, and I got her back, and all the sad years of watching her decline were gone, and that was that was an amazing experience. So I'm going to fast forward now, um, and tell you the second part of this three-part story, which was in 2017. Um, the phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. My husband also worked at Aspen Technology. We were about to go to start our commute, and he put down the phone and he said, "I'm so sorry, honey, your father died." He was young. He was only 78, and it wasn't expected. And I don't know where it came from, but it was like he possessed me. And I said, "It's okay. We have no unfinished business," because he was the most amazing person. And this childhood I've been trying to describe to you, Stan, stemmed from being accepted and loved in every way. And we had tickets to go see the Gypsy Kings that night because it was our anniversary. Um, we did not go see the Gypsy Kings that night, Tom and me. We did go to a local restaurant, and he said, "I don't want us, your dad wouldn't want us to remember this day as the day he died. He would want us to remember it as the day he walked you down the aisle." And that's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. I had given my tickets to the Gypsy King to a friend, a colleague and friend who also loved them, and they went. And I didn't know they did this. And I've seen them several other times, but they did the song "I Did It My Way." And my dad absolutely loved that song. And she sent a video clip right around that time. It's like, oh my goodness. And then the last part of this three-part story of the loss of my family is about my brother who got divorced. And in 2011, I went to stay with him in Austin. I got one of those hotel rooms, Stan, that has more than one bedroom. And I had one and he had one. And we basically spent a 3-day weekend together. He was showing me all cool places in Austin. And he had his AA 30-day clean chip and his life was turning around. And it was a good time. And as I was dropping him off at his apartment, he said, "Oh, I made you a playlist." And he got out of his backpack a CD. And I said, "Oh, just put it there in the glove box." I drove away, Stan, and I forgot. Totally forgot. I went back to my corporate life, dropping off kids at band practice and baseball practice and Boy Scouts. And, I just forgot. He died unexpectedly in October of 2013 while I was at a conference. And so I came home and got my son, and we were going to drive to Austin where my nieces and my brother's ex-wife slash widow was. And my son wanted to look at a map, and he opened the glove box and he said, "What's this, Mom?" And he held it up, and it had my brother's writing on it. And I remembered, and I asked him to put it in the CD player. And it was just some of his favorite songs. And the very first one, and before I tell you this, you need to know that Black humor is very big in my family. It just is. That's the way you deal with it. The very first song was Los Lonely Boys, "How Far Is Heaven?" And it is this gorgeous but tragic song. I mean, beautiful. And the theme is "How far is heaven?" I would just like to know. And that, I guess my brother really was one who could really crack me up. That cracked me up, laughing and crying, and my son too, for 15 minutes, because he's my younger brother, but he's the one who knew the secret of how far heaven was. And that's still for me to earn and to learn. So that's my story.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm interested about your outsourcing of all this. Did you get a lot of interaction generated as you were doing that?
I did, and it was quite remarkable and as I said before, humbling. And the things that people remember are different, or they're not things I would think that they would remember. Um, One of the things I thought was really interesting, Stan, was most people said any story about you and your dad, any story about you and your son. Some people had very specific stories about my dad or me and my son. Some people had stories about the time we were in the chili cook-off and the chili spilled. And I mean, it was really interesting to see the connection that you have with other people and you don't expect that they'll remember some of these things. I can send them to you if you like, but it would almost seem self-congratulatory because there was a lot of what I'm sure you get too, being at this point in your career, such a mentor that you are. There was a lot more of what you've meant to me is not, I was looking for not missing a good story, you
Right,
know?
right.
Um, but I can send it to you. I will if you promise not to think I was self-promoting.
I don't think that. I think that it reminds me a little bit of It's a Wonderful Life in that we tend to think of ourselves less, less flatteringly than many people that we know and have touched.
Oh my gosh. And that is exactly right. And that's another movie that I would recommend. Um, I wonder if you would let me read you this
I
poem.
will, yes.
And then you can edit it out if it's too long.
No, I'm
It's
not
not a
editing
real
it out.
long poem, but it's very illustrative of what I was trying to describe about my childhood. It's called Beach Life Childhood. And it's a negation poem. It's the things it wasn't about. Um, and I think I'm going to not cry because I didn't cry with that last
Okay,
one. So this
good.
is good. I cried when I rehearsed. Um, it wasn't the salt and sand drying on our skin, a shimmering crust like sugar dusting on desserts. It wasn't finding sea beans and catching fish with our hands and writing dreams on the sandy shore with the pointiest pieces of driftwood. It wasn't riding our bikes in knee-deep waves to the pier every day in the summer to buy a Coke and a candy bar. It wasn't even the innocent abandon our parents felt when we moved away from suburbia to the beach, the way they blossomed and became themselves as they were meant to be. It wasn't their absolute joy in using the seine net to catch redfish and speckled trout and the crab trap to bring in blue crabs for dinner. The best of it was simply the sense of place, the aliveness of it all, the surf, the smiles, the selves, the humanity unburdened by city life. The best of it was simply that the only things that mattered were the things that actually mattered. The people, the pets, the ideals, the aliveness of it all, the surf, the smiles, the selves, the humanity unburdened by city life. I'll always remember my days by the water. It wasn't hampered by irrelevance. It wasn't keeping up with the Joneses. It wasn't limiting in any way. I'll always remember my days by the water. A childhood so perfect, it almost hurts to remember. The best of it was simply that the only things that mattered were the things that actually mattered.
Thank you for that, Kim.
Thank you for letting me.
I'm going to wrap up by just briefly talking about something I mentioned at the start, which is several years back, you had talked to me about the idea of us being on the stage together, something that you wanted to do. And I said, that's fine with me. And we talked about a few different ideas. And over those years, we tried, I think you tried harder than I did to try to influence the KM World director to put us on the program. And I don't think we had success even for two or three tries, but this coming November, next month, we will indeed be on the stage together. So it paid off. The persistence paid off, and we'll have a chance to be the co-host of a session at KM World. So thank you for suggesting it and for keeping after it.
You know why, don't you?
Why is that?
Because you're my guru. I want to be on the stage with you. I want everyone to see that I am on the stage with Stan Garfield. I have been sitting in the front row and listening to you talk and learning from you for years. And I would say you're one of the top three most influential people on my career in terms of the things that you have gathered for other people to use. And you continue to gather, to collect treasures and share them with others. And I think that's basically the highest calling. So I'm doing it to make myself look good by being on stage with you.
Well, and vice versa.
Aw, thank you.
So, Kim, thank you a lot for that entertaining and moving session today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stan. I appreciate you. Bye bye.
Bye.